I'm Karen Brinson Bell, Executive Director of the State Board of Elections. I'm here with Paul Cox, our General Counsel to the State Board. Thank you to all the members of the press in attendance for helping us to get accurate information to the public. Tomorrow, Tuesday, May 14th, is the second primary election day in North Carolina. There are two statewide Republican second primaries on the ballot tomorrow, state auditor and lieutenant governor. To be eligible to vote in those contests, you must either be a registered Republican or an unaffiliated voter who either did not vote in the March 5th primary election or voted the Republican ballot in the primary. The winners of these contests will be the Republican nominees in the November general election. Also, on ballots in some locations tomorrow are a Republican second primary in the 13th Congressional District, as well as local contests in Gaston and Orange counties. Tomorrow is the last opportunity for registered and eligible voters to cast their ballot in this election. Election day polling places will be open statewide from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Voters should go to their assigned voting location. You can find your assigned voting location and your sample ballot in the voter search tool on the State Board's website, ncsbe.gov. Some election day voting sites have been consolidated for the second primary, so please make sure to confirm the location of your election day polling place through the voter search tool. Another important reminder, voters will be asked to show a photo ID when they check in to vote. Most voters will simply show their driver's license, but there are many other acceptable forms of photo ID. For more information, including the full list of acceptable IDs, visit bringitnc.gov. If a voter cannot show a photo ID, they can still vote by filling out an ID exception form and voting a provisional ballot. Finally, a crucial reminder to absentee voters. If you still want to vote your absentee ballot, your only option is to drop off your ballot at your County Board of Elections office by 7:30 p.m. tomorrow. Today is too late to put that ballot in the mail. It must arrive at your County Board of Elections office by 7:30 p.m. tomorrow. As an alternative, you can simply discard your absentee ballot and vote in person at your assigned voting location tomorrow. So, how will results get reported? Unofficial election results will be posted as they come in tomorrow night on the State Board's elections dashboard, results dashboard, as always. Just remember, elections are not over on election night. During the 10-day canvass period after Election Day, bipartisan county boards of elections in all 100 counties count the remaining absentee ballots, research and count provisional ballots, audit the results, and conduct any necessary recounts. For example, every county conducts a sample hand count of ballots in randomly selected Election Day precincts, early voting sites, or the absentee ballots cast in the county. Even during second primaries. We do this with every election. This process is to confirm results tabulated by our certified and tested voting equipment. Counties must conduct these hand counts in public. Finally, I just want to tell voters, all voters in North Carolina who are eligible to vote in the Republican second primary, that there is still time to make your voice heard. All too often, we see low turnout in second primary elections. Yet votes cast in these contests will decide the nominees of the Republican Party for the general election in these particular contests. So get out there and vote. And with that, I will take your questions. Please put your name and media organization in the chat if you wish to ask a question.
All righty. Looks like Michael Highland was first. Michael, go ahead and unmute and ask.
Are you able to hear me okay?
I can hear you,
Yes, we
Michael.
are.
Okay, great. My first question related to what you just said at the end about the history of the low turnout in these second primaries. What, if anything, do you think the state could do? Are there any steps you think could be taken to help improve turnout in these second primaries if we're going to continue to have them?
I don't tend to weigh in on that, but I'm happy to talk to legislators. It did actually come up briefly in a question from a legislator during the Joint Elections Committee meeting recently. And there are options. We have adjusted this law in the past, and I think that's something that legislators can consider and determine whether a second primary method is the right path for North Carolinians or not.
And then are there any recommendations for counties who may be concerned about the cost of doing this with seeing so few people turn out? Any other things that maybe could be done to help with that?
The cost of elections by our state law is the responsibility of the counties. That might be something else. There's different methods of who pays for primaries and second primaries and runoffs in other states. So that would be something we would need to look at from a legislative standpoint, and happy to discuss with our lawmakers on how those methods and processes work in other states. But at this point, what we do, whether it's a second primary or a general election, whatever the case, we prepare for 100% turnout and hope that we will see that kind of turnout, whether it's a second primary or a presidential general election.
Laura Leslie, you should be unmuted.
Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Laura.
Hey, so a couple questions. Number one, what was our turnout for the first primary?
We were at about 24%, if I remember correctly.
And what do we average for a second primary?
Second primary are far too often in single digits. It does certainly depend on what might be happening in a local contest like we've got going on in Orange and Gaston counties, or we'll probably see a higher turnout in the counties with the 13th congressional district. But overall, statewide, we're at about 0.7% turnout for those voters who are eligible, which is about not quite 5 million eligible voters, considering the unaffiliated and the Republican voters.
You're saying so far?
So far, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Hopefully that goes up tomorrow. We do
Right.
hope to see people turn out.
Right. Okay, so another question. What do people do if they are one of those folks who has gotten delayed getting their driver's license because of the glitch that's happening at the DMV? So say you've got a paper driver's license, how do you vote?
There's actually an exception for that on the exception form. So we could help them that way, or potentially they may have another acceptable form of ID. There are many student IDs that are acceptable, public employee IDs that are permitted, tribal, veteran IDs, passports. So there are options, and that's why we definitely encourage voters to look at our website and the list of IDs that are acceptable. bringitinc.gov is the site for that. And again, if it's this particular case where they have not gotten their ID from the DMV at this point in time, that is an exception on the exception form as well.
Great, thank you. And just real quickly, do we know that has Jennifer Moore withdrawn from the primary in Orange County?
That she's actually past the point to withdraw, but she has resigned. So we have a situation where she will appear on the ballot. The ballots had already gone out. Similarly, we have an indication from the 13th congressional district that one of the candidates does not intend to continue, but the ballots had already gone out in both of these situations. So that process will continue. Those votes will be counted. If those individuals happen to be the top vote getters, then we'll address that with them and how they choose to continue.
So there's nothing like if you go to an election site, right? You go to vote tomorrow on election day. There's no signs or anything that are telling you that one of these people is no longer running.
That's correct. They have announced that, but they could not withdraw at the point when they made that announcement. Paul, is there anything from a legal standpoint you want to add in on that?
No, I think you said it correctly. I mean, at this point, our law requires that the election continue as is and that the results be declared. And because the Orange County contest is not a primary contest, it's like the actual election, the runoff to determine who's going to take office. So whoever is the highest vote earner in that runoff contest will be declared the new person who's eligible to assume office for that Board of Education seat in Orange County. And then it'd be up to that person whether to assume that office, just like it is for anyone who's elected. And if they don't, then it'd be up to the Board of Education to fill that vacancy if no one takes office once they're elected.
Thank you.
Gary Robertson, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
I can hear you, Gary. It's a
good.
little staticky. Let's see how
I'm
it goes.
sorry, I'll try to
Oh, that's
be,
good. You're good
succinct.
now.
Okay, I wanted to ask, I was intrigued by the idea that there are some counties where precincts have been consolidated for the second primary. How is that accomplished? And is that a potential solution for counties to deal with second runoff expenses in the future?
It's actually a practice that in my 18 years of working in elections administration, that we've seen. This practice has gone on for some time when we have second primaries where we anticipate a lower turnout, or even in municipal elections when there are fewer eligible voters, we can consolidate. There's a provision within the law about, the locations being adjacent, the precincts being adjacent to each other, so that we're not, creating a burden for someone to have to travel across the county. It's not that level of consolidation, but nearby precincts can be consolidated. The boards had to take action on that, send notice to the voters that were affected. So it's something that we've approved many weeks ago. Actually, I guess you could say almost months ago, as they rolled into the second primary to be prepared. And it does help to reduce costs. We still are able to identify the ballots cast by precinct, because the voters are still registered with the precincts that they, their boundaries, where they belong, but we are able to use a consolidated polling site.
Thank you.
All right, I see a couple hands raised. I'm going to get to you all first. Lisa Wharf, do you have a question?
How many fewer polling sites are you expecting in this second primary compared to the first one?